Okay, so today we're going to give you a little bit more information that you can use to make your foldable also, okay? And we are going to start with carbon compounds because all organic molecules are made from carbon, okay? So carbon are compounds that or organic compounds contain carbon atoms bonded to other carbon atoms, all right? So characteristics of carbon include the fact that carbon forms strong and stable bonds.
What?
It forms strong and stable bonds.
I don't understand.
Carbon can form bonds with other carbon atoms, as well as a variety of other elements, such as oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. And carbon can form chains that are almost unlimited in size. It can make really big chains and really big rings, and then rings with chains and chains with rings. It's like Legos, okay? It can do anything. So macromolecules. Many of the molecules in living cells are so large that they are known as macromolecules. Okay, macro essentially means giant, so a macromolecule is a giant molecule. So macromolecules are made from thousands of smaller molecules. And actually, I might have you add this word into your notes. Next to that part, I want you to add, they're called M-O-N-O, monomers. Is that in your vocab? Monomer? Okay, perfect. So these smaller things that make up a giant thing are the monomers, okay, and then the giant macromolecule is a polymer. Okay, so there are 4 groups of organic compounds found in living things. They are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So characteristics of carbohydrates. All right, carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. So for every carbon, there is another oxygen molecule, and there are 2 hydrogen atoms. So if you look at the top picture, you can count them. It's not really important that you do that, so we will skip this because I am cool like that. You are welcome. All right, so some examples of carbohydrates are sugars, starches, and celluloses. Do you know where you find cellulose?
Nope.
In plants. You know the stringy part of celery? That's cellulose. See if it'll work. Come on. Turn on. Oh my God. Why is this taking forever? Okay. These carbohydrates are known as the quick energy foods because they're very easily converted into energy by the cell. This is why you eat a candy bar and in about 5 minutes you're like, hey, I'm feeling good. All right. So there are 2 main functions of carbohydrates. So first thing, living things use these as their main source of energy. Okay? The second thing is that some plants and animals use carbohydrates for structural purposes. Okay, that's like what gives celery its strength. Potatoes are made of carbohydrates. Okay, and the smaller molecules that make up carbohydrates are simple sugars such as glucose. Okay. All right, the sugars. So carbohydrates are classified according to how many sugars they have. Okay? According to the number of sugar molecules they contain. So we have monosaccharides. Mono means what? One. Very good. So how many sugars do monosaccharides contain? One. All right? They only contain one molecule of sugar, just like this. So straight glucose is a monosaccharide. Di means how many? Two. Very good. So a disaccharide has how many? Two. Okay. Fructose is an example of a disaccharide. That's the sugar that you find in fruit, usually. Poly means how, what? Many, right? Lots. So polysaccharides are composed of many sugar molecules, like thousands, like hundreds of thousands, tons. Yeah. Let's do it. 3 common polysaccharides, okay, that you will see are starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Okay? Starch is the yummy stuff, which is generally only found in plants, and it's the way that plants store excess glucose. For example, a potato is full of extra sugar, okay? Extra starch. That's how it stores the extra glucose. So many molecules of glucose are bonded together to form starch. Now, if you eat a bunch of extra sugar, you're like, for lunch today, I'm having 7 candy bars. Are you just going to grow a potato off the side of your head? No, that would be weird. If that happens to you, you need to go see a doctor, okay? People store extra sugar as glycogen. Okay? Animals and humans store extra glucose as glycogen. And your liver actually does this, and it bonds them all together to make glycogen, and glycogen is the next thing your body burns after all the carbs, simple sugars are gone. Then it turns to glycogen. Last but not least, you have cellulose, okay, which is also found in plants. Thank you. Very good. And it gives strength to the plant cell wall. This is like the fibrous material in plants, okay? It is the major component of wood and paper. So, some of you with old school pencils, I don't even see one right now. I see literally everyone has a mechanical pen. Oh, I see one. Yes? One old school pencil. Right? Are we good? Okay. Okay, lipids. So examples of lipids are fats, oils, and waxes. Fats, oils, and waxes. and they are not soluble in water. Do oil and water mix nicely? No, because it's not soluble in water. Like some of those salad dressings, you have to shake it up, right? Your lava lamp. I'm sure you guys all have lava lamps at home. Prime example. So lipids contain the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but not in the 1:2 ratio seen in sugars. It's not in the same ratio. It's a different one, which gives it very different properties, okay? So there are two building blocks of lipids. They are the fatty acids and the glycerol. Most of the time. All right, so a lipid has one molecule of glycerol and 3 fatty acid tails. So these two things right here are the glycerol part. So if you look at yours, you should see like the little end. I think on both of yours it's to the left in your notes. That is the glycerol portion. So if you circle it in your notes, circle the glycerols. So that is like the backbone of the lipid. And then each one has 3 fatty acid chains, okay? So those are these parts right here. Those are the fatty acids. So a lipid has one molecule of glycol and 3 fatty acid tails, just like we've seen. Here they are again. So if a fatty acid tail has at least one carbon-carbon double bond, it is said to be an unsaturated fat. Out of these two molecules on the board, is the one on the left or the one on the right unsaturated? Left or right? Which one's unsaturated? Not all at once now. Perfect. Left. You can see it right there. Okay, there's that carbon-carbon double bond. Therefore, it doesn't have as many hydrogens as if that bond wasn't there. So it's unsaturated. If the fatty acid tail has no double bonds, it is said to be saturated. It is said to be saturated. Okay? So the fatty acid on the right is, thank you guys, saturated. Okay, we already went over that and that. Okay, is this fatty acid saturated or unsaturated? Blurt it out. Very good, unsaturated. And how do you know? Double bond, double bond, double bond, double bond. Okay? So this one is unsaturated. Examples of saturated fats, they tend to be solid at room temperature, like butter and shortening and lard. Okay? Saturated fats tend to be solid at room temperature. Do you ever make like amazing pot roast or soup or something, and then when it gets cold, on top there's just like that layer of fat? But it is delicious, right? Come on. You heat it back up, it melts back in. It's pretty good. Unsaturated fats tend to be good, liquid at room temperature, like olive oil and vegetable oil. Oh, in your notes it should say unsaturated fats, unsaturated fats are the healthy ones, and saturated fats are generally the unhealthy ones, okay? So unsaturated fat is your like omega-3s and your flaxseed oil and your avocados and your coconut oil. You guys hear about those kind of, okay? Your saturated fats tend to be McDonald's, things like that, also delicious, but not as healthy, okay? So uses of lipids, there are 4 little boxes for you to write this in. Use number 1 is to store energy. So in that first box, just write store energy. So if you are eating more food than you are burning through, you will store it as a lipid. They also function as part of your cell membrane. They actually make up the membrane of your cell, and without it, you would not have a cell. You would just be a puddle. It would be very unfortunate. They form waterproof coverings on feathers, fruits, leaves, etc., waterproof coverings. And they insulate your internal organs. So without any body fat, your organs, like your heart, would just be rubbing against your lungs. And yeah, it would not be comfortable. So you need some internal fat supply to keep your organs from being sad. Yes. Okay, nucleic acids are macromolecules containing the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Or as they said in the video, perfect, chomp. That's weird to even say. CHONP. I prefer to say choppin' because I think that's easier to say than chond. Right? There are 2 kinds of nucleic acids. They are DNA and RNA. And the monomer which makes up these nucleic acids are called nucleotides. Nucleic acids store and transmit genetic information. That is the most important part of nucleic acids, is that they are in charge of all of your genetic information. Good? Proteins. These are macromolecules that contain CHON. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So if you want to abbreviate it, just put CHON. CHON. And the building block of proteins are what? Good job, amino acids. Hopefully you have drawn at least one of those on your paper from the foldable. And there are actually 20 different amino acids. Okay, there's 20 essential amino acids that you need to survive. Okay, that's why they say sometimes things are like a perfect food or a whole food, like rice and beans, because it has all 20 different amino acids. It has everything you need. So each amino acid has 4 parts. So on that little diagram I printed for you, you can just circle and label the parts. Do you guys see the little picture I gave you? Perfect. So the carboxyl group is that COO part or COOH part. So on your picture, it should be the far right side of the molecule. Circle it. Label it carboxyl group. The next part is the amino group. It's the nitrogen and hydrogen side. So there is the amino. You can just label it amino. Then there is a single hydrogen, which you don't need to label. And last but not least, the R groups. These are all the R groups. On yours, it just says R. It's just to show you that for the different amino acids, that's the only thing that's different. They all have that same general structure, but the R group is different on each one. Cool? There are many uses for proteins, such as enzymes, hormones. I think I already wrote these down for you. Yes? Transport proteins, contractile proteins, antibodies, membrane proteins, structural proteins, etc. So tomorrow we're going to start talking about enzymes, which are a special type of protein. Okay? But you now have the rest of the class period to finish your foldable. It is due when?
Tomorrow.
Yes, that's right. All right. And this will go on page 5 of your Ian.